The 2018 NFL Draft is 5 years into their careers, and as you'll see in today's video, some of these picks are thriving while others completely change the course of a franchise. We are grading picks 1 through 16, and if you are interested in picks 17 through 32 from the 2018 class, that will be linked at the end of today's video. And as usual, we will be going in reverse order, so we will start with Tremaine Edmunds, who was drafted by the Bills, and finish with Baker Mayfield, who of course was drafted by the Browns. And with 16 picks to dive into, let's begin. Tremaine Edmunds was the Bills' second first-round pick of the night and is now a member of the Chicago Bears. During his time in Buffalo, he had over 100 tackles in every season and even made 2 Pro Bowls. Edmunds played and started 74 games for the Bills during his time in Western New York and was an above-average starter, and while I think the Bills will certainly miss him this year, they could not afford to pay Tremaine $18 million per season. And when you draft a player as good as Tremaine, you'd like to lock him up long-term and have him play a decade for your franchise, but getting 5 good and pretty healthy years out of a first-round pick that played at a Pro Bowl level is nothing to scoff at. And 5 years later, Brandon Beane and the Bills get an A grade. Kolton Miller, the left tackle from UCLA, was the Raiders' first-round pick, and boy did he have a tough start to his career. In Kolton's rookie season, he allowed 16 sacks, which is the most any singular player has allowed in a season over the past 5 years. However, I want to credit Kolton in a big way because he has improved significantly and is quietly a very, very good left tackle. And for all of the things the Raiders have not done right over the past few years, hitting on their franchise left tackle was certainly one of them. Good, that is. Kolton will play this season at 28 years old, and I truly believe he has the talent to be a Pro Bowler, and with the Raiders' first-round pick from 2018, they drafted a franchise left tackle who will play for them for close to a decade, if not longer. I would like to see Kolton get recognized nationally, and 5 years later, this is an A. The Saints traded up in the draft and even gave up a 2019 first-round pick to take Marcus Davenport, the pass rusher from UTSA. Marcus is now a member of the Minnesota Vikings, and this trade did not work out anywhere close to how they envisioned it when they made this trade. There was a lot of thought at the time that it was for a Heisman-winning quarterback from Louisville, but it was to bolster their pass rush. And 5 years later, Davenport has just 21.5 career sacks, with a career high of 9 in 2021, and has started 32 games in his career. Davenport certainly isn't a bad NFL player, but he's not a player you want to take number 14 overall, which also included giving up a future first 4. Not every first round pick is a home run, and this is a classic case of this, a C- grade. Daron Payne has been a force on the interior defensive line for Washington, and him and fellow defensive lineman Jonathan Allen make opposing teams' lives hell every single week. And it was on display week after week after week in 2022, as Payne registered a career-high 11.5 sacks, which is absurd from his position. He rightfully so earned a Pro Bowl appearance, and given he is only 25 years old, I don't think it'll be his last. And quietly, Payne has totaled over 50 tackles in every season in the NFL, which, again, is very impressive. I truly think by the end of his career, we could be looking at a 4 or 5-time Pro Bowl player, and a player that could end up in Washington's Ring of Honor. Granted, I think higher about Daron Payne than a lot of people, but 5 years later, this is an A. Vita Vea, the big fella from Washington, went to Tampa at number 12, and this is tricky to grade because with Vita, you have to know what you're getting. His production isn't always going to be on the stat sheet, and the likelihood he ever has 60 tackles in a season or 9 or 10 sacks is very, very low. But opposing offenses have a lot of trouble with him, as he is essentially a 345-pound wrecking ball right in the middle of the defense, and he's pretty athletic for his size, all things considered. To date, Vita has a singular Pro Bowl to his name and, of course, is a Super Bowl champion, but you can very easily make the case he should not have been drafted number 12 overall. I didn't hate the pick, but I also wasn't in love with it either, and 5 years later, the Vea selection garners a B+. Minkah Fitzpatrick is tricky to grade, not because he's not a good player or any of that, but because the Dolphins traded him so early into his career and didn't get anywhere close to the return on the investment from Minkah that they could have. And remember, the Dolphins in 2019 were a truly terrible team, and Minkah was traded to the Steelers for a first-round pick along with a couple of later-round pick swaps. Since Minkah became a Steeler, he has 3 first-team All-Pros and 3 Pro Bowls to his name, which obviously would constitute an A-plus grade, but where does that leave the Dolphins' draft grade? They got good production out of him while he was a Dolphin and received a first-round pick in return, so all things considered, I would probably give this an A, but Minkah is without a doubt an A-plus talent. Now, from an A-plus talent, we go to Josh Rosen of the Arizona Cardinals, and Josh is the epitome of a draft bust. From the 9 mistakes quote to poor level of play on the field to being traded a year after being a franchise's first-round pick, and as a quarterback at that, it's pretty clear what this draft grade is going to be. To date, he's thrown 12 touchdowns to 21 interceptions, completed just 54% of his passes, and has a lifetime passer rating of 61.1. Whether it be a part of practice squads or even on the active roster, he has been a member of 7 different NFL organizations in 5 years. And 5 years later, guys, you know what's coming here, an F grade. Mike McGlinchey was given a bag by the Denver Broncos this offseason as he signed a 5-year, $87.5 million deal, which ended his time as a 49er. And Mike certainly had his ups and downs as a player for the Niners, as he allowed 6 sacks in 2022, which was tied for a career high, and also had 10 penalties, which was a career high too. If you are ranking guys on a 100-point scale, I think Mike is slightly above average, but not to the point that would warrant a contract paying him nearly $18 million per year, so in that regard, I think the 49ers made the right decision by not keeping him at that price. But he started 69 games, nice, over 5 years and was a little above average, and this grade is a B. Roquan Smith was the Bears' first-round pick in 2018 and was traded during the 2022 regular season to the Baltimore Ravens. In 5 years, Roquan has nearly 700 tackles, 18.5 sacks, and 8 interceptions. He also has the rare accomplishment of having 3 All-Pros, but only has a singular Pro Bowl to his name. He had his first-team All-Pro in 2022, which were preceded by 2 second-team All-Pros in 2020 and 2021. This grade is tough because there's going to be people that say you should not take an off-ball linebacker in the top 10, but on the other side of the coin, if you draft a 3-time All-Pro player, that's a selection any team would love to have regardless of the position. I understand where the Bears are as a franchise at the moment, but this grade is a strong A, and if you want to give it an A+, be my guest. Josh Allen from Fireball, California is up and has completely changed the course of the Bills franchise. Prior to Allen being selected, this team had a singular playoff appearance since the turn of the century. So yes, that means 1 playoff appearance in 17 years, and they are now a fixture in the AFC playoffs. You would like to think at some point they will win a Super Bowl led by Josh Allen, but even having Josh on the roster gives them more than a fair chance to get there every single year. And in today's NFL, that's all you can ask for. He's a 2-time Pro Bowler and has 3 straight seasons above 40 total touchdowns. Unfortunately, with the postseason losses, this is an A and not an A+, and before you turn this off and tell me I'm an idiot, I am completely kidding, and this is an easy grand slam A+ draft grade. Quentin Nelson is a 5-time Pro Bowler and a 4-time All-Pro with 3 first teams from 2018 through 2020. While he technically had the worst year of his career in 2022, he was still a good player for the Colts. He just wasn't the ass-kicking first-team All-Pro player we became accustomed to seeing. It was more of a human year for Quentin than everyone is used to seeing, which again would still be a good year for a lot of other guards. I would like to see him return to the player we saw in the first 3 years of his career, and hopefully having a healthy Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson rejuvenate the big fella and the rest of the Colts offensive line. Big Q is a 5-time Pro Bowler in 5 years, and I have no problem giving this an A+ grade. When drafting a pass rusher in the top 5, you're hoping for a player that has double-digit sack season after double-digit sack season, but that has not been the case for Bradley Chubb. He had an insane rookie season, which was his best year to date, as he had 60 tackles, 12 sacks, and 21 quarterback hits. And to date, he has just 28.5 career sacks in 5 seasons. He hasn't been a bad player, but I do think he has been a hair underwhelming for being a top 5 pick, and especially when compared to some other players in this class. I think Bradley is an above-average pass rusher, but you would never say, hey, I think Bradley is a top 2 or 3 player at his position. And this is not a mid-first round pick we're talking about. For a top 5 pick, this is a B- grade. Denzel Ward played high school and college football in Ohio and was drafted by the Cleveland Browns. And when drafting a corner in the top 5, you need to be right, because if you're not, it can get ugly quick. But the Browns were right, and Denzel has been a very good player for them. Lifetime, he has an opposing quarterback rating when targeting of just 75.9, and has been a very good player. Again, not top 2 or 3, but a player that has 2 Pro Bowls to his name, and I know some people downplay Pro Bowls, but Denzel's were well earned. Lifetime, he has 13 career interceptions and even has 2 pick sixes. The only knock on Denzel is he's never played a full season, and the best ability is availability, and 5 years later, this is an A-. Sam Darnold is up, and I know the immediate thought is to give him an F, and while I'm not advocating he was good for the Jets, what I will say is he was dealt a very shitty hand, and while he hasn't exactly bounced back anywhere else, it would have been difficult for anybody to succeed in these circumstances. And with a player like Josh Rosen in this class, I have a hard time justifying giving Sam an F grade when a player far, far worse at the same position is also in this class. And believe it or not, Sam actually went 7-6 one year as a starter and threw 19 touchdowns during that span. The pick obviously didn't hit, but I just don't think it's a blatant F, and in fact this grade is a hard D. Saquon Barkley, a running back, was drafted number 2 overall, and obviously there was a ton of scrutiny with that pick, but in 5 years, Saquon has 3 1,000-yard rushing seasons and 3 1,400 total yard seasons. The injuries were very unfortunate, and now we're at a standoff about a long-term contract. His talent is undeniable, but drafting a number 2 overall was certainly a decision, and I don't criticize Saquon over Josh Allen because projecting what Allen would have became back then would have been insane, but I wasn't a fan of the Giants drafting a running back even as talented as Saquon is at 2. I don't think there's any way you can justify this pick, and I think this is the hardest pick to grade out of any of these in today's video, and ultimately we gave it a B. Baker Mayfield is up, and I always thought he got the wrong end of the deal for how his time ended in Cleveland. Now, I don't think Baker was an A+ level talent, but with the team they had in 2020 and with the run game and the play action game, I thought they could win and that they could legitimately compete with Baker Mayfield, Nick Chubb, and of course the offensive line leading the way. He was efficient in the Browns' offense and certainly flashed at times. And that's kind of been the story of Baker's career, flash at times. And for a number 1 overall pick 5 years later, to not be with the same team that drafted him is disappointing. And 5 years later, we give the Baker Mayfield draft grade a C. That's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, as it would mean the world and help tremendously. We're closing in on 75k, and if you'd like to support the channel, the link for my Patreon and Twitter are in the description. And until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.